I know a lot of recreational athletes who get stressed out about running events, and I simply don't understand why. Because they run because of health, they run because of the joy of running, not because of performances. So why get stressed out at all? So it's very
Right.
important to go back and find the answer for why did you even start it.
Right.
Is it because of your friends that you started, which is okay because that's one way of catching up? Or did you start because you wanted that space for yourself, or is it because of your health? That's very important. So even here, if they can start working on controlling the controllables, that's literally like the word. So even if here, like there are very few things which are controllable, and if they can start working on just those, it'll be great. So even with my athletes, there are things that they would have wanted to do while they have training and everything, but then they wouldn't have found the time for that. And this is the time we use for all those things. When they look at it as a whole, when there's a huge goal to achieve, and they feel it's very hard to achieve, they get really overwhelmed. So the best way to go about it is to break it up completely. It's just about equating it to something that you like, one thing. Two is breaking it down. So if it's too big, break it down.
I am Baiki Winky, and this is the Working Athlete Podcast. Here, I talk to working athletes from all walks of life and experts from various sports to provide you with inspiration, training tips, time management, and lifestyle advice. If this is something that interests you, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any future episodes. Today's guest is a psychology graduate from Women's Christian College in Chennai, who specialized in sports and exercise psychology from Loughborough University in the UK. She helps a lot of young athletes from various sports with their mental health and mental strength so that they can perform at their best in their sport. She herself is a very active runner and a cyclist. Her name is Keerthana Swaminathan from Think.Train.Perform. Welcome to the Working Athlete Podcast, Keerthana. It's great having you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
So for the benefit of the audience, can you introduce yourself and Think, Train, Perform for the audience?
Sure. So, as you said, I'm a sports and exercise psychologist. I work with various sports, right from golfers to motorsport to, racket sports, swimmers, athletes, various kinds, even chess players. I also work with our exercise population, which is predominantly runners and cyclists right now. And I've seen a variety of issues that arise which inhibit performance. And I also noticed that physical activity and mental health is very much connected, and that's something I always preach and practice. Think, Train, Perform is something that I started off 4 years ago, and through that I end up taking these sessions, train others to understand what sports psychology is, because there is a deficit of sports psychologists as well in our country. So that's what I do.
Excellent. So let's get into what we talk a lot about mental health and mental strength. What is your definition of mental health, and what are some of the signs someone shows that needs help with respect to mental health?
See, I think many people attribute uh, mental health or a lack of mental health to an emotional disturbance. Whereas I feel emotional disturbances are very common, and it's very human in nature. Obviously, every human being has emotions. There's nothing wrong in having negative emotions or getting into that. But I think it's also about getting back in the balance, being aware that a person is going through this and getting back into it. So that qualifies for mental health. It's not about being positive all the time. It's just more about being aware that you are going through certain emotions and getting back and restoring balance. That's
Okay.
about it.
Oh,
It's just very simple.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
So
yeah,
basically, being aware of your mental states and
exactly.
coming back to bringing those states back to those that are beneficial for you
For
in that
you,
moment.
exactly,
In
exactly
that
that,
moment.
exactly that.
Awesome, awesome. Uh, and what are some of the things that people can do to uh, make sure that they are aware of their states, and then they are in control to kind of bring back to say in the states that are beneficial.
Right. Awareness is literally the key to everything, even in terms of sport, right? Being aware of a niggle in your body prevents you from getting an injury. So, awareness is that important. And what a person can do is when they can be aware, or they can start understanding what triggers them into getting into either a positive or a negative emotion, both.
Hmm.
So once they understand the cause of it, and then get into what kind of body responses they get into because of the trigger. So let's
Right.
say when I get angry, I end up sweating profusely and my heart rate increases. So I know I'm getting angry, right? So the trigger, so what is the trigger? What caused that anger? And what is that body reaction that you're going through? And after which, how do you behave normally? Because
Right.
that behavior is what causes issues with everyone else, or
Correct.
even sometimes for the same person, right? So once you analyze this, and this analysis happens only when you introspect a lot.
Right.
So it's very important to know what you've done for the day, how all you felt during the day. And it is a very, very slow process. Maybe the first few months, a person will just start introspecting and say, okay, these are the emotions I'm going through.
Hmm.
And maybe eventually they'll come up with, okay, these are my triggers. And eventually they'll start recognizing their body language and slow down the entire process.
Okay.
But it's a very, very slow process of being aware.
Okay. So
Yes.
you a couple of things jumped out at me. So triggers, so understanding the triggers, and trying to see what is causing a particular emotion, and how can we stop that from those triggers from happening, especially in situations that are not beneficial for us. And also introspecting, you said,
Yes.
and
Yes.
introspecting helps you identify those triggers as well as the
Exactly.
reactions of us for those triggers. Okay,
Exactly.
so uh, what are some of the things, tools that people can use for this introspection?
Uh, so, in terms of introspection, journaling is a very good method of um, understanding oneself.
Hmm.
So, at the end of the day, if they can just write down what are the emotions they went through, how all they felt, most of them don't have a good emotional vocabulary. They don't know what emotion feels a certain way. What does it mean? But it's okay. Like, if they can write it in their own words, that's fine.
Hmm.
If they can write it in their own words and understand what could have caused that, journaling is a very good method of even understanding the triggers
Okay,
and
super.
knowing what are the emotions they are going through. Either way. And
Uh,
it's very good if they can record both the positives and negatives that happen.
Okay. We're talking about journaling being very effective for bringing out triggers and trying to understand your mental states and stuff. That's excellent. Um, so we also talk about, some people are very, we say some people are very mentally strong.
Mhm.
what qualities define mental strength?
There are quite a few qualities that define mental strength, uh, but sadly, in our society, that's taken in the wrong sense, I would say. So, strong people are very determined in nature,
Mhm.
but it's also called being stubborn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, strong people are extremely determined in nature. When they have a goal, they end up, getting it done, no matter what. It
Mm.
doesn't mean they don't go through hindrances. They do go through, in fact, probably a lot more hindrances, but they don't give up.
Right.
They're extremely persistent in nature. They
Mhm.
keep trying, keep trying, keep trying. And also, they're very resilient. Even
Mhm.
if they fall, they get back on top constantly.
Right.
And if they don't like a particular place or a state of mind, they move. They don't stay there and keep crying about it.
Okay.
So this is one quality which I think many of us don't even know about, which is nothing but controlling the controllables.
Ah. Okay.
So we end up worrying about things that we can't really control. And what mentally strong people do is they focus on only the things they can control.
Right.
Like, for example, you can't change the triggers, but you can definitely change the way you feel about it, and probably your exposure to the triggers,
Mm.
and probably even the way you behave after that. So
Right.
they focus more in terms of controlling the controllables than looking at the uncontrollable factor. Whereas the rest of them would focus only on the things that they can't control, which means they end up victimizing themselves. So this is a major difference.
Okay. Okay. So you said they're determined, persistent, resilient, and they move away from the states that they don't
They
like.
don't like, yes, which means they control the controllable.
Okay, that is the controlling the controllables. All right.
Exactly that.
That is an excellent list. Now, are people like born with these, or can people like me work on them?
Of course, these are all workable skills very much. It's just a mindset.
Hmm.
All of this is mindsets. It is hard. There are a certain traits with which people are born with, but even those are definitely changeable. It just
Hmm.
takes a little bit of effort. That's
Right.
about it. So definitely these are just mindsets. These are just qualities, and definitely these are very much changeable.
Okay.
And
And
it's more like, when you go to the gym and you train the muscles and then they become stronger. It's something very similar to that.
right, right, right. So, say um, I'm struggling with a workout. Say,
Mm-hmm.
let us bring this concept into practicality where
Sure.
I am. I am struggling with completing a workout, right? Says a lot of people um, fear something called an FTP test,
Yes, yes.
right? So
The most dreaded.
the most dreaded workout, right?
Yeah.
So how can they deal with that, and how can they use any techniques
Yes.
to overcome that?
Yes. So this again, this particular quality, I've worked on with myself and with my athletes as well, and that's why I can, I'm smiling so much about it. Um, the thing is, all of us know there are two emotions which are very alike. One is anxiety or nervousness, and
Mhm.
excitement.
Correct.
So when we hear the word FTP test, which is the trigger, we end up feeling anxious and nervous about it, either because of our previous experiences of failing in it, or difficulty level, or probably because someone else has told us it's very hard. Like we just associate FTP test, we dread it. That's how we associate it, right? So what happens to us is it's automatic in nature that we are scared about the consequence. Not scared, we're anxious about the consequence. So on the other hand, excitement is also about the consequence, but it's a more positive feeling,
Correct.
right? So what happens when you're anxious, the kind of physiology that happens is you get more the arousal rates are very high, which means your heart rate is higher, you get more stressed, and what happens here is your muscles get stiff, hence you can't perform in the FTP test too well.
Right.
um, but on the other hand, with excitement there's an energy flow.
Hmm.
Your heart rate does go high and all those physiological states are still there, but your muscles are not stuck because there's a lot of blood flow. So there's a
Right.
big difference there. So what
Right.
I work on is a change in perception.
Hmm.
So instead of, oh, I am anxious about or I'm nervous about the FTP test, it can be more about I'm anxious about failing the FTP test or not doing well. Usually that's what people are anxious about.
Right.
It can be I'm excited about trying out the FTP test for the first time.
Right.
They might end up overachieving it.
Hmm.
So this is one way they can change, and it's just about stopping there when the thought happens or when they're talking to someone. Let's say many people talk about this to their coach. They might come and tell you, I'm nervous about it. So you can stop there and correct them saying, hey, maybe you can get excited about it. There's nothing to be anxious about, you know? So that is one way you can change it, definitely.
Hmm. So the switching of the thought process there is also about so looking at it as just another workout, right? So
Yes,
what is going to change if you fail the FTP
yes,
test? Nothing is going to
exactly
change,
that.
right?
Exactly
So
that.
you can try another time,
Another
maybe
time.
a couple of weeks later, or
Yeah,
whenever you feel better. But this is and another thing is, if this is the duration of, say 20-minute effort, you have, it is not like you are doing that a hard effort for the first time, right?
yes,
You would have done a similar effort on a
yes,
climb that is on Nandi or something. You can
yes,
probably look at it and equate it with that and
yes.
say, I am just climbing Nandi now.
Another
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Another
Yes,
time. And then, so I guess looking at the problem or the anxiety
yes,
in a different way um,
definitely.
can switch, like you said, can switch
Yes.
that anxiety to
To
excitement.
excitement. Yes.
And
100%.
awesome. Yeah, I think that is a very useful thing. But say all these, the being aware that,
Mhm.
again coming to that word, awareness, the being aware of the triggers, as in what is causing this, or why am
Yes.
I anxious about this, why
Mhm.
am I afraid of doing this, and then
Yes.
being aware of that emotion, and then rationalizing and turning those
Exactly.
thoughts
Yes.
into excitement. Yeah, I
Yes.
think that is great. Now they on this, on similar note, there
Mhm.
are FTP test is just one thing that
Yes.
majority of people tend to have issues with. But there are things like, there is a particularly hard workout, say, 10 Tabata interval sets, and three of them or something like that. And
Yeah.
I people are anxious about hard workouts that
Yes.
are scheduled the next day, right?
Yes.
and it plays on their mind, and they when they get to that, eventually they tend to give up, to
Underperform.
underperform or give
Yeah.
up too soon.
Yes.
um, so what are some of the ways that they can deal with such anxiety and uh, yeah.
So one thing is that people get overwhelmed because they look at it as a whole.
Hmm.
So when they look at it as a whole, when there's a huge goal to achieve, and
Hmm.
they feel it's very hard to achieve, they get really overwhelmed. So the best way to go about it is to break it up, break it up completely. I still
Beautiful.
remember one of my coaches gave me a 35K run, out of which 21 kilometers was tempo, and it was 3 into 7K run. And I still remember the way I had to, I just went beyond my comfort zone, and I literally broke it down into, you know, 7Ks. And I said, okay, 35 minutes, okay, 30 minutes, I'm going to work on this. So those kind of things. And it was more of a mind game.
Right.
And 100%, if they break it down into once very recently, 25 into 400 meters.
Right.
No, 40 into 400 meters. Sorry. So
Wow.
that was crazy. So I had to
Yeah.
break it down literally.
Yeah.
And every 10, I used to say, okay, I'm, quarter done.
Right.
Another 3/4 to go. That's
Hmm.
about it. So once we break it down, it becomes a lot more enjoyable.
Right.
And once they equate it to something that they like, for example, 3.5 hours can be a movie and a half or something like that. Maybe 2.5 hours can be like a few episodes of the TV show that they get to watch,
Right.
right? So it can be anything.
Hmm.
So once what happened was I had to ride 100K indoor last 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 year lockdown,
Hmm.
and the only thing I could equate it to was a movie. I said, okay, I'm going to watch a movie and ride the tempo run, do the tempo ride. So and that gave me a lot of confidence and said, okay, it's easier for me to do that. So it's just about equating it to something that you like. One thing.
Hmm.
Two is breaking it down. So if it's
Right.
too big, break it down.
Right.
Let
Right.
me go, like climbing 10 floors is very hard. Mentally, it's not even the actual effort, it's the perceived effort. So let me do it. Let me go one floor, and
Right.
then let me think about going to the next floor, and then the next floor, and then you will end up reaching 10 floors.
Uh,
So that's
Beautiful.
that.
Yeah, I think that makes a total sense, right? When you break a big workout, a hard workout into
Yes,
chunks, that really helps. Say if you have 3 sets of these intervals,
exactly.
take one set at a time, and then
Yes.
even within that set, just focus on that
Well,
immediate
yes,
interval, and
exactly.
then that interval, and don't I would say, don't take a decision about the
About the
next
next,
one
exactly,
while
exactly.
suffering this one.
This
So
one, yes,
just focus on this and don't take a decision about that, because you will definitely quit thinking, okay, I am
yes.
suffering so much in this.
Right
how I,
now, and
how am I going to do all the other 2 sets? So
yes,
that that plays on my mind even after years of
100%.
doing crazy workouts. It still plays on my mind
Yes,
a lot. And the day I take the decision about the next couple of sets, while doing this set, I am done. I give
yes,
up. So
exactly.
so I think breaking it
Being
up
in that moment, yeah,
breaking it up is one thing, and then being in that moment and getting it done, and
yes.
not taking a decision about the
Next
next
set,
one during
yes,
that time. So ride it
yes,
through and say maybe after the interval, after the rest interval is done, see how you are feeling. I am sure you would recover and then just keep at
Yes,
it.
keep going. Yes, definitely. In fact, this reminds me once, actually, I had a 2.5 hour run and I knew I was really tired. So I just cheated my mind and I said, okay, 20 minutes, I'm going to go out. 20 minutes, that's all. So I went out for 20 minutes. At the end of the 19th minute, I said, okay, 20 minutes more, let it become 40. It actually became 2.5 hours.
Right.
And it's just about making that decision spontaneously and telling your mind, okay, you can push through, that being in the moment definitely makes a difference.
Yeah. So again, that break, another example of breaking it up, right?
Mm-hmm.
Something like climbing Kalahati, right?
Yes.
So one of the TFNs that I had, one of the best climbs I did during Kalahati, during TFN climbing Kalahati, was when I broke up the uh, entire climb into
Mm.
5 minutes. Say, and I said, okay, I'll climb 5 minutes. Within that 5 minutes, I will climb seated for 4 minutes and then
Mm.
stand up for 1 minute, so that my different muscle groups work and I stay loosened. And then, okay, this 5 minutes is done. Now another 5 minutes, but within that 5 minutes, this 4 minutes I am seating, climbing seated, and then standing for that 1 minute.
Yes.
So it became like a game that kept me focused just on those small chunks, 5 minutes at a
Exactly.
time, but also within that 5 minutes, 4 minutes at a time, and then 1 minute at a time.
Then the 1 minute.
So it was
Yes.
like a gamification of the breaking up of
Entire.
the huge thing,
Yes.
breaking up of the huge thing, and then gamification of those
Yes.
small
Yes.
things. I
Yes.
think
Yes.
that's a beautiful, tip that you gave. Breaking it up and then equating it to something that you like is also an excellent thing,
I know
because
many athletes equating it to food that they like. They say, okay, I'm going to run this many and then I'm going to go and eat. So it can be anything.
yeah. So one of the things that I've done in the past is told myself that I would not watch anything while I am not on the trainer. So I'm not watch any series or any movies that I like while I'm not on the trainer. So it kind of gave me an excuse to do those, get on the trainer in the to begin with. And if I have a
Yeah.
series to watch, I can schedule even a 4 hour
Yes.
ride on the trainer. So
Binge watch episode.
binge watch episodes basically, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it works. Once I watched Mars. I think that is a 3 hour
Yes.
movie, and
Yeah.
it went through. I think that is also a great point. Excellent. So coming to those things, we addressed a FTP, trying to FTP workout, how we can equate it to something that they have already
Yes.
done, and turn that into excitement, and turn the mental switches to something that they dread to something that is just another workout, and
Yes.
making it more turning the anxiety
Enjoyable.
into excitement. Yeah, something
Yes.
enjoyable and something that they can be excited about.
Yes.
And we also talked about being overwhelmed with a hard workout and how they can break it up, and I think that is very very useful. Now we a lot of us have big goals. If I have a goal, a goal in mind, like preparing for a Giro del Dolomiti, which is like, which
Mhm.
can be overwhelming,
Yes.
or preparing for uh, my first TFN, which is like
Yes.
completely scary experience. So
Yes.
are, big event, those jitters and anxiety.
Yes.
How can people deal with those big pre-event jitters and anxiety? Say I have trained for 6 months for a BBCH ITT or BBCH Nandi race, and I am
Yes.
really really nervous about that at the start line. How can
Yes.
people deal with that?
Um, so people get nervous and anxious because of the expectations there. So they have a certain expectation and then they're not able to reach that certain expectation. But what actually works is to set that expectation just a few days or while doing the main workout before the main race, they have this last key workout, right, before tapering. So figuring out the goal at that particular point rather than having something in mind before you start training itself.
Hmm.
So once you go there, it definitely that will, let's say you, like with my case, one thing I observed was, let's say just a week before I have my key run, and I say, okay, I'm ready for a 48-minute 10K.
Hmm.
And that 48-minute 10K, I come up with that number because of my workouts and everything, which means my body is very much prepared for that 48-minute 10K.
Right.
Or I can even push to 47 if I'm not nervous about it. So then I go to the start point and just tell my body, hey, just do whatever you can. Because you've trained really hard, just go and enjoy the entire race. So usually during the race, while starting in the line, while standing in the start point, right? Um, it's better not to think about the goals at all.
Hmm.
It's better to think about enjoy your race, just enjoying the race, because race is not something that you, the race course, whichever it is, whether it's riding, running, whichever it is, that environment is not something you get on an everyday basis. And that's something you really got to enjoy.
Right.
Your body is prepared for the conditions,
Right.
and mentally you got to be there and enjoy. So what's the point in being at the race and being nervous about it, focusing too much on the goal and not on the process of actually enjoying it and letting your body do the work,
Hmm.
and not enjoying it at all. So at the end of it, you're just going to remember a race where you probably didn't achieve your goal and you didn't even enjoy as well,
Right.
right? So during in the start line, it's very important to just keep focusing on, okay, this is going to be my mindset wherein I'm just going to enjoy the race no matter what and keep pushing hard.
Hmm.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, that's a great point about the two things, right? So while you have the event, um,
Yes.
and you want to do really well in that, but you might start your training block with that in mind and set the training plan
Yes.
in talks with your coach towards that particular outcome, right?
Yes.
But then what I understood from what you were saying is the before the after the key workout before your taper week, see, take and reevaluate that those
Goal.
expectations,
Exactly.
reevaluate these goals and expectations, and be realistic about it, right? If you
Yes.
are, if that indicates that you are ready, you are ready. And if you that indicates you are not ready, okay, be okay with it. And um, and if it indicates that you are ready, be okay with that as well. And
Exactly.
use that to deal with that anxiety.
Exactly
Is
that.
so saying that don't be anxious, because you are ready, you have done all the things that needed to be
You're
done.
supposed to be doing, yeah.
Yeah, the only thing that you can do now is be in the moment and execute
The plan.
whatever you need to do, right?
Yes.
That is an excellent point. And what I also noticed is um, something about that kind of resonates with controlling the controllables, right?
Exactly that.
So you don't you there are in a race scenario, there are things that you can control, which is your performance. Say
Exactly.
especially if it is an ITT, you have more in your control,
Control or
which
yeah,
is your own performance. um, what is the power number you want to put, what is the cadence you want to maintain, what is the are you maintaining the tuck that you need to be in.
yes,
So these are all the things that are in your control. But what are
exactly.
the things that are not in your control? The things that that are not in your control are the conditions,
Weather conditions, exactly.
are the road condition, be it road conditions, be it the fact that you could puncture,
Exactly.
be it the fact that the winds have turned from being tailwind to headwind and you are
Headwind, yes,
suffering. These are not controllables. And also the another big uncontrollable is the performance of your perceived rivals, right?
exactly.
So
Yes,
that is not in your control, and that we can let play on our minds, and
100%.
that clearly affects the way we can perform. Because
Exactly.
if you, instead of focusing on the controllables, you're focusing your focus has shifted from the controllables to the uncontrollables, which
Yes.
include cursing the
The roads
weather,
are not good.
uh, cursing the headwinds, cursing, I mean, fearing that that your competitors are much stronger, they are doing
Yes,
better, imagining that they are doing better. But
exactly.
what can you do
Maybe
if they,
not. Yes.
yeah, what, if you are suffering, it is likely that they are suffering as
They're
well.
also suffering. Yes,
But either way, you cannot control anything, and you cannot do anything about it. What you can do is just focus on your effort.
yes,
So I think those are, we can bring that control,
definitely.
handling the controllables into that. I think that
Race
is,
day, definitely.
yeah, raised a, scenario. And there, the controllables are much lesser when,
So it's easier to
yeah,
control them. Yes.
correct. The number of controllables are much lesser in a road race scenario,
Yeah.
where where there are a lot more
A lot of
uncontrollables,
people. Yeah.
lot of people around, lot of the tactics of the other teams, other rivals, and all that
Yes.
come into the picture. So you got to be a lot more focused on your controllables, which
Controllable.
is responding your mindset, positive mindset, and staying focused in the moment, and reading the race and responding to the race
Correct.
according to whatever plan A, B, C you have.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Exactly.
Brilliant. I think that that helps.
Yes.
Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about say, dealing with the disappointments of, right, uh, say people train for months together, and uh, we just talked about how they can deal with the start line anxiety, and
Yes.
focusing on controllables and stuff. No,
Yes.
they have done what they can or not, but
Mm-hmm.
they ended up not getting the result they want.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, not
Yes.
finishing, uh, and ending up DNFing or something, not the result that they expect
They expect. Yes.
after months of preparing for it,
Hard work.
hard
Yes.
work, right?
Yes.
So, and it can be completely demoralizing. So how
100%.
can people deal with a scenario like that effectively?
Yes, disappointments can, um, in fact, demotivate them from training again. And
Exactly.
it's something that most of them would go through after a race.
Hmm.
Um, so, one thing is, in terms of dealing with disappointment, is for them to understand what actually happened, analyze the race, because then they end up knowing. I know it's a very tricky part. I
Hmm.
know it will hurt them a lot more, but actually going through that will enable them to understand and not get disappointed again.
Right.
So maybe they have not set the right goal.
Hmm.
Maybe their mindset wasn't all right over there, or maybe they made a technical mistake. It could be anything, could be a combination of so many things. But that, while analyzing it, it's going to be very hard. After analyzing it, it's going to be a lot more liberating, because you know what you want to focus on at the next point.
Hmm.
So this is one way where a person can deal with disappointment. The other way is to take a day or two off,
Hmm.
you know, because they might have been too disciplined and too, they, in their mind, they would have sacrificed a lot.
Hmm.
I know a lot of athletes enjoy and do it, but a lot of athletes sacrifice a lot of the things that they like to eat, maybe their sleep, everything. So maybe they get that 2 days off and then analyze these things.
Right.
Because for them, it's more about, okay, I've put in so much of effort and I did not get anything. In fact, that's when people get disappointed.
Correct.
It's not
Correct.
otherwise.
Right.
So, if they can just chill out, I think that's the word people use, right? So if they can just chill out for like 2 days and then get back into training so
Hmm.
that they can revisit their goals and things like that, that will be great.
Right. So analyzing, that's a great point, right? But analyzing need not be immediate, because you
Yes,
you 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 are already down in the dumps, and you don't want to probably not put your beat more. You're already beating yourself more, and
mm.
you that analysis might contribute that beating more.
No,
But
actually what happens is,
hmm,
when you it's only before you analyze that you keep beating yourself up. Once
okay.
you analyze, you end up taking responsibility for the mistakes you've done,
Hmm,
and people are more likely to move on because they now know what's the mistake.
right.
So that entire disappointment happens when there's no rationalization at all.
Hmm, 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 hmm.
So
Right.
that yes.
Yeah, that makes sense, because say I am on a road race, Nandi road race, and just I'm going well, pulling at the front, and then doing, and then it's one point an attack goes, and I just sit up and get dropped from a peloton.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know why I've done that, right? So I got dropped, but why? My training was all right, and so sitting and analyzing that and said, okay, so I was thinking too much ahead. I was, equating that the pain I felt at the moment and multiplying it 100 times and saying, okay,
Exaggerating it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so if I'm suffering so much 20 kilometers into the race, and I have 80 more kilometers to go, how much more do I need to suffer? No,
Yes.
I will give up now. It is easier to sit up now than
Sit up
going through
later.
that sit up later.
Yeah.
So or something else, what are the things that caused you to do that, or what are
Yeah.
the things that are responsible for that particular thing happening, and
Yes.
is it justifiable, or is it normal? It is important, like I said, to be to look at a situation with a bit of empathy, self empathy,
Exactly. Exactly that.
right? Not just being
Critical.
critical.
Yeah.
Being critical and being honest is important, but also you
Give
know
yourself that benefit of doubt.
right, look at it with a bit of self empathy, so
Yes.
that you are taking it in a positive way for the next
Mm.
time. You're
Yes.
taking the lessons for the next time.
Exactly.
um, yeah, that
But there's a very
analyzing.
thin
Yeah.
line between self pity and self empathy. So I know a lot of people get into self pity, and the
Mm-hmm.
difference is that people who self pity are still in the same, they keep doing the same mistakes over and over again. But people who empathize with themselves, they are more balanced, and they end up, they're not too critical about themselves, but they end up working on the things that they had to work on. So that's the
Right.
difference between people who are, pitying themselves and who are empathizing with themselves. And I think that line is very, that thin line, it makes all the difference.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely, definitely. Oh,
Yes.
oh, poor me. I I couldn't have done anything.
Yes. Yes.
Versus, okay, I've done a mistake, and that is okay, and I know what it is. I should not repeat it the next time.
Exactly. And maybe I didn't know what to do at that point, and I'm going to learn what to
Learn
do.
from it. Okay.
Exactly.
While if you're pitying yourself, you're telling that you cannot do anything about it. You are, oh, poor
Yeah.
me.
More of a victim. Exactly.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that is a great point. Thank you for bringing that up. And you also talked about uh, moving away from the situation and giving it
Mm.
time to settle. Uh, uh, so to speak, settle. Let the dust settle
So this
before.
is more for people who are very critical about themselves
Right. Okay.
and who are too much of perfectionists.
Hmm.
So they need a few days off to
Okay.
just, not do anything. To, in fact, they'll find it very hard to just take a break. So the coach needs to tell them to take a break. This happens with me a lot. So my coach literally will force me to take a break.
Right.
And I think that's very important. Without those 2 3 days off, I don't think I would not be self-critical. I'll keep beating myself up over and over again.
Right.
So that 2 3 days definitely will make a difference, and 100% will bring out a fresh perspective, either in terms of working harder
Hmm.
or in terms of reevaluating and working.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. That is great. Now, let us talk something about the current situation, right? Um,
Yes.
e- there are with the current situation, like last year we thought this was crazy. Now it
Yeah.
went like 2x 3x crazy with the
Hmm.
current pandemic situation, and people
Yeah.
are going through a lot. It might be a bit um, mentally people are going through a lot,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what are the how what do you see how the pandemic has affected some of the athletes that you deal with, and what are some of the common causes, I mean common things that are
Issues
coming
they
up,
face.
issues? Yeah.
Yes. I think the common theme right now is anxiety.
Hmm.
And because of anxiety, a lot of guilt as well. I'll just explain both a little further. So, anxiety could be either because of COVID in itself,
Hmm.
whether they'll get affected, or if they get affected, what will happen to their training,
Hmm.
or it can be because of the consequences of COVID that impacts their training and their competition.
Right.
So what
Right.
happens to my ranking? What happens to this? What happens to that? In fact, I had an athlete who was selected for the World Championship and wasn't able to go because India was banned from that particular country. And that triggered a lot of guilt in him. So there
Right.
was a sense of anxiety as to what's going to happen. And then there was a sense of guilt that he couldn't go there and perform.
Hmm.
So it is a very hard time to deal with. But having said that, I think even recreational athletes are going through that.
Right.
um, Not just elite athletes. I think people right now, they are going through a lot in terms of uh, okay, I'm not able to train, I'm not able to go out for a run, I'm not able to ride. Of course, we
Right.
found alternatives, but it's not as engaging as, or
Correct.
it's not as, you get what I'm saying, right? So
Yeah.
that's what it is. But then there is this anxiety and guilt, and the causes could be different, but this theme exists a lot. And again, people get back into this entire cycle of pitying themselves and just being there. And they've literally, I won't say wasted 3-4 months, but then they've just been in a very bad state of mind for 3-4 months. And coming back from
Yes.
the lockdown, they get back into, okay, what's going to happen? So
Right.
again, they get back into more anxiety.
Right.
So even here, if they can start working on controlling the controllables, that's literally like the word. So even if here, like there are very few things which are controllable, and if they can start working on just those, it'll be great. So even with my athletes, there are things that they would have wanted to do while they have training and everything, but then they wouldn't have found the time for that. And this is the time we use for all those things.
Right. So now, that is a good thing. Being uh, if looking at the controllables, controlling the controllables, and seeing what, yes, we are in this situation. What can we
Yes,
do? What are the things that we can, control? Uh, that can be okay. Getting myself on the trainer for an hour,
yes,
regardless whatever the events, where we cannot control when the races are going to come. We cannot control
exactly.
when, but I can control that I get my workout for today, and
Yes,
get those endorphins for the day, and
exactly.
be in a positive mood.
Exactly.
Great. But one thing that I kind of notice, and that is very relevant in the current situation,
Mhm.
is the motivation, like the
Yes,
drop in motivation. It
100%.
so actually it need not be due to pandemic. It kind of happens at
Mhm.
regular intervals for people. Like they they,
Definitely.
they work for a race, and not do well, and then
There's a drop
lose
in
the
motivation.
they lose that motivation to train again for another event
Yes,
or come back. Or it could be suddenly they burnt out, um, uh, and they don't find any motivation. So
correct.
how do people deal with these drops in motivation? And
Okay.
yeah.
So, see, one way of preventing the drop in motivation is to, take enough rest in between.
Mhm.
Doing things other than your primary focus. So
Mm.
let's say as a psychologist, I'm constantly working and focusing on, working, and maybe I get to run as as a way to rest,
Right.
as a way to just relax. Or maybe I get to dance as a way to relax.
Right.
So the person needs to have other methods as well. So that's one way to prevent it. But having said that, to get back out of a burnout or a loss of motivation is, um, you know, they need to start looking at what they want to do three months from now, 4 months from now. And a lot of people have this common, not common, underlying desire to do something that can
Mm.
be anything. Like for me, it's the desire to help another person or to empower another person. And just with that one thought, I know I can climb from zero motivation to probably 100% motivation. So
Okay.
there is something that everyone would have. Usually, if a person is demotivated for getting back to training, he's demotivated for everything else. It causes,
Ripple
ripple
effect.
effect. Yes, exactly. Even in terms of work and everything. But he gets one thing right, everything else gets right.
Mm.
So that's one way of doing it. The other thing is to go one decision by decision. So
Mm.
let's say I've not run in a week. Uh, so maybe the next day, instead of a 1 hour run, go for okay, just say, okay, I'm going to go out for 10 minutes and run and come back. Let
Mm.
me see how that goes. And rekindle that liking for, training.
Right.
Revisiting, why did you train in the first place? Was it because of the outcome, or was it because you like to train? That is very, very important. And that, see, most of us end up uh, thinking about the performance, thinking about the outcomes only because of our peers. It's not really us.
Hmm.
It's really not us, because most of us get instigated by the rest of them who are seeing our Strava, who are seeing our, Garmin Connect and everything. But then it's very important for them to get back and realize deep down, why did they start training?
Right.
Rekindle that a little bit. So slowly get them into that.
That is beautiful. The earlier point about what is driving them also is that, right? The
Yeah,
why. What is the
exactly.
why, that, why did I start riding, or why did I start
Exactly.
racing, or what is
Exactly.
that big why for me? And did that why change because of whatever happened
Reason.
before,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
If not, so keep, why not keep at it? That
Yes.
why for me
It's very important.
is my health, right? So
Exactly.
my health, being healthy, doesn't depend on the world opening up,
Yes.
the races coming back. I
Or your
still need to
performance
be,
also.
are my performance.
Yes.
I need to be healthy, and I need to have a plan to do that, right? To stay
Yes.
healthy and to stay fit. So
Exactly.
yeah, finding that why and going back to that basics
Exactly.
is
In fact,
will help that motivation, I think. Yeah.
100%. In fact, even I know a lot of recreational athletes who get stressed out about running events. And I simply don't understand why, because, they run because of health. They run because of the joy of running, not because of performances. So why get stressed out at all? So it's very
Right.
important to go back and find the answer for why. Why did you even start it?
Right.
Is it because of your friends that you started, which is okay, because that's one way of catching up? Or did you start because you wanted that space for yourself, or is it because of your health? That's very important.
Right. Beautiful. Beautiful. That's a great point. All right. So I think I've covered everything that I wanted to cover, but as a parting, I have one question for everyone. What are some of the tips that you would give working athletes to do well in sport while doing well at work and family lives?
I think prioritizing
Mhm.
and finding that balance. And for you to get to both, you need to be aware. So, the entire, like I spoke about the question why, answering the question why is very important. Answering why is running, or why is a certain thing important, and how much it means to you is also very important. And how much time are you willing to spend for each? Compartmentalizing it, prioritizing. If this happens, do I take a back step in terms of running, or is that not what you're going to do? So everything is integrated with the value system so that they don't get disturbed.
Mhm.
I know getting to understand one's value system is very complicated, but if they get to know that, I think they'll know how to balance their life. So for me, it's more about getting my 1 hour workout in.
Mhm.
Or, on days that I'm really held up, 20 minutes, I really need to work out. Whether it's at home, whether I go out for a run, I don't care. I just need to sweat it out. So that's in my head. If I'm busy, if I have some wedding or anything for that matter, I need to work out for 20 minutes.
Right.
Apart from that, it's okay. Other things are fine. So things like that, they need to, that if they are able to understand and prioritize, it'll be great.
Mhm. Super. Awesome, Keerthana. This has been a fantastic chat. We heard you touching a lot of important things. One thing, some of the things that are really useful. I think a lot of people will find this episode very useful. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your thoughts on this.
Thanks for having me here. I really enjoyed it.